Sir Geoffrey Howe had become one of the most influential opponents of Margaret Thatcher's stance on Europe. But the disagreement between the two politicians went far beyond policy.
I think as the years wore on, they got on each other's nerves to an increasing degree. One of the problems was that, it seemed to me, that Geoffrey Howe has a rather roundabout way of expressing things. And when he came over to Number 10, he used very circumlocutory language. He would start from the middle, as it were, rather than from the beginning. And most people know the one thing you have to do with Mrs. Thatcher is to get your point into the first half of the first sentence, because that may well be the only sentence you ever get, you're ever allowed to speak.
We've achieved that because we've been able, during the 2 terms in office.
Even in public, Margaret Thatcher found it difficult to hide her impatience with Sir Geoffrey's determination to cover the ground thoroughly.
The credibility and effectiveness of our economic...
Geoffrey's personal style was very different from mine. He has a lovely speaking voice, quiet speaking voice. But at Cabinet, we always reported on foreign affairs. We always have it. This quiet voice was so quiet sometimes that people couldn't hear, and I had to say, speak up. And then he gave it in a way which wasn't exactly scintillating. And foreign affairs, you know, are interesting. They affect everything that happens to our own way of life. And they are exciting. And so we just diverged.
From 1983, when Geoffrey Howe became Foreign Secretary, colleagues had been first embarrassed and later appalled by the Prime Minister's public humiliation of this senior politician.
I think because he is very polite and didn't answer back. I mean, it was almost as if he was being treated as a cross between a doormat and a punch bag. She would delight in front of others. I mean, what she said to him in private was her own business, but in front of others, in front of colleagues, she would treat what he said in the most dismissive way, be extremely discourteous to him, trample all over him, and it was very embarrassing for others to witness.
Mrs. Thatcher would always be very critical of Geoffrey, sometimes almost rudely. I felt uncomfortable as a relatively junior member of her staff to be present to hear her talking pretty sternly to a minister as senior as Geoffrey Howe.
I think that one of the things that she had never fully absorbed is that it's bad management as well as bad manners to reproach, as it were, officers in front of other ranks. If you want to tick people off or have arguments with them, then you should, as a matter of courtesy, do it first in private. But I think that she had then become increasingly reckless, if you like, of the way in which she conducted personal relationships of that kind.
I wish she'd come and said, why not? Other people didn't fear to come and discuss. Although I did have discussions with Geoffrey as Foreign Secretary, usually once a week. What a pity. He didn't say.